shining bright on this Monday evening, 7 Eastern, and we are on the ranch. And I span the globe for all things indie Americana music. But tonight's going to be a very, very different show. What we're going to do is I talk to a lot of artists about the changes in the industry and the things that are going on. What I'm doing tonight is bringing on somebody who has been in the industry. I won't tell you how long, I'll let him tell you how long, and has witnessed a lot of the changes going on, what it means for indie artists. This episode, as always, is produced by Blast Music 24/7, which is a home for indie artists to really showcase and shine as artists. So anyone watching, check it out, like it, follow it. They're good people. And this is always interactive across 7 platforms, and we will be on Roku. So always. So, in this industry, when you're a musician, you have no bigger friend than your DJs as to help you promote music. So tonight I am bringing in one of my favorites from Chattanooga himself. Let's talk to Phil Kranz. Hello there, in the flesh, like seeing your face. Woo.
I'll bet you say that to everybody. They're your favorite DJ.
You're my first DJ actually on the show. Caden Gordon was on as a songwriter himself.
Okay.
And then he talked about some of the things he does, because he does DJing, but he does artist promotion as well. So, but you're my first dedicated DJ, so we'll give you that honor.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you.
So let's take it from the top, from someone looking from the inside, from the outside in, because we're kind of engrossed in the music business and what we have to do and, this and that. But there have been a lot of changes. So we've talked a couple times. You don't remember a time when you weren't in the music business, listening to music, even as a 9-year-old.
Well, I think I was dropped on my head one too many times, because when I was 6 years old, my sister, she was 4 years older than me, and there was a record store about a half a mile away from the house. So I went with her when I was 6 years old, and I fell in love with music at that point, just going into the record store, the smell, the sights, the sounds. And I bought my first record when I was 6 years old.
When you were 6 years old.
Rooftop Singers, Walk Right In. I still remember that. Don't ask me how I know.
Oh, but wasn't it the best just to go into a record store and you spend hours just looking at the covers, and they let you listen to the songs there, and it was a cool thing to do.
Well, it was great because you'd buy a 45 and you get 2 songs for the price of one, because you get an A-side and you get a B-side.
Right.
And I was the kind of person, I'd go and buy records, and the first thing I would do when I got home is I would play the B-side, because I already knew what the A-side was. And sometimes the B-side was a whole lot better. And when I was 9 years old, what's really sad is the guy that owned the record store knew me by name.
Because you're smart. I mean, I remember we could get together with friends and you go, hey, you want to play records tonight? And everyone would bring over records, and you would just, what do you got? What do you got? Oh, I got this. And, you'd sit and you'd listen to records.
It was great. It was a much better time.
Yeah, nobody goes, hey, let's go get together and listen to singles tonight. Nobody does that.
No, now everything is electronic, and there's just something about buying a record. You'd go, you'd get it home, you'd look at the record at the front and the back, open it up, and sometimes there was writing or pictures on the jacket inside. And it was just so much better. I mean, MP3s, don't get me wrong, they're nice. They're instantaneous. You get them immediately. But there's something about MP3s. They're just not, there's no warmth to them.
Well, it's digital production, which we can talk about, but I'm a big fan of analog vocals, but everything gets digitized. So
I know.
What's the point?
Well, I've been into radio. When I was a kid, I used to make my own playlist with my tape recorder with the external mic. You needed the external mic, and I'd have it pointed right to the radio. and you had to be quick to hit record and play at the same time.
Did
And I
that
would make my own playlists, and then after I got done making the playlist, I had a slotted spoon that I used as a microphone, and I would intro and outro the songs. I even had my own commercials and my own PSAs. And then I would go around and I would find people to interview. And at first they thought it was really cute. There's a little kid going asking, interviewing. I think after about the thousandth time, when people would see me coming with my little slotted spoon, everybody would scatter, and it was the slowest one that got stuck with me.
So you always wanted to be a DJ?
I did, and then, well, when I went to college, I got my degree in journalism and advertising, and I worked on the school radio station and the school newspaper.
So
And
it was journalism and advertising, but not radio specifically, not communication. Okay.
And so I worked at the radio station at school. I didn't have a dedicated show. I came in, I filled in for people who were sick or who were on vacation. So my schedule was always screwed up. I never knew when I was going to be on the air, but it was fun. I enjoyed it, and I got my first taste of radio. And then when I got out of college, I went to work for a couple of newspapers. And after that, I started getting back into radio. I think one of the reasons I didn't get into radio at first was you had a choice, either being in radio or eating. And I got used to eating. And you can't do both when you're starting out in radio. It's one or the other. And it's
Right.
worse today.
Welcome to the music business.
No lie. And it's the only profession where there is zero job security. You could be there one day, and the last words any DJ wants to hear is, hey, when you're done with your show, can you stop by my office? Because nobody is ever going to hear from you again.
Now, a lot of people don't understand the designations of radio stations, the top 40, AAA. Can you break that down? Because it does matter at some level.
Well, top 40 doesn't exist anymore.
Okay, what it did.
And when it did, top 40 were stations that played the top 40 most popular songs out. And all the radio stations, they all had their own charts, and it was based on how many people called in requesting a song. So I grew up in Chicago, and we had WLS and WCFL, and every week they came out with their top 40. And that's all they would play, would be the top 40 songs. And sometimes, they'd throw in some new ones every now and then because they had to keep on rotating. And when a song would drop out of rotation, they'd bring a new one in. Top 40 basically is what top 40 made radio. It made AM radio.
It made AM radio.
Made AM radio, yes, because all the top radio stations were all AM. And it wasn't until the late 60s that FM started coming around. But when FM first came around, they were not playing top 40 music. Most of the FM stations were playing album cuts. They were playing obscure songs. They were the ones that would play a 10-minute long cut because they weren't constrained by time. Top 40 stations, the longest song you could go would be 3 minutes. After that, they wouldn't play it.
They even speed up songs so it's 3 minutes.
They would. And if a song ran over 3 minutes, it totally screwed up their clock for the entire day.
Right. So they did nefarious things. And so FM almost started out like as an underground movement.
It did, yes.
The counterculture, what you don't hear. And they found that almost like history repeating itself. Like people then went to FM. Maybe they don't want to hear the same songs all the time.
There were a couple of reasons people went to FM. Because on AM, you could hear the same songs, whatever station you were listening to, they were all playing the same top 40 songs. People went to FM because they'd hear music that they weren't hearing anywhere else. They'd hear album cuts, they'd hear songs that AM radio stations, top 40 stations would never play. The other reason is the sound quality, because AM radio, you get a bad storm, you start going out of range, and you start losing the signal. FM, the signal travels a lot farther, and it's a lot clearer.
And didn't radio stations also kind of start specializing, like, oh, this is rock and roll, this is, you know,
They did. Well, there were dedicated country radio stations, and then you had your top 40 stations. And the thing I love about music radio in the 60s and early 70s was there really were no genres because you could listen to a top 40 station and you'd hear rock, country, blues, jazz, instrumental, you'd hear everything. There were no genres. It's not until later on that the genres started coming around.
right, and becoming significant. You had to label how you were releasing your album.
Which I never really liked because I always believed if music is good, it's good. And it really doesn't matter what genre it is. If people like it, they like it.
Yeah, but it really did become so diversified. It's interesting because we weren't labeled, and then we were heavily labeled.
Yes.
And if you labeled yourself as rock, don't submit to another genre, like, and now we're kind of swinging back again where genres are becoming extremely fluid.
Well, the funny thing is, my radio show, it's Black Dog Indie Country Radio, and I play everything. I play country, rock, blues, jazz. I play everything, and I've had people get mad at me telling me, "Well, you advertise yourself as a country station," but I listen in, and I'm hearing rock, and I'm hearing everything else, and I'm like, "Music is good. Music is good music."
Yeah. How important is it for an artist to get a song on the radio? Has that shifted over the years?
Well, it has shifted because before the internet took over and before iHeart and Cumulus and before the major players took over, the only place you were going to hear a song was on the radio. You weren't going to, there was no internet back then. So if you wanted people to hear your song, you had to be played on the radio. Otherwise, the only place people were going to hear you is maybe in your hometown or when you were doing shows. And the whole idea of radio, I mean, there was never any money in radio. You were never going to get rich having your songs played on radio. The whole idea.
That hasn't changed.
No, but I mean, there's people who think that just because somebody had a number one song on the radio back in the day that they were rolling in the dough. There's never been money in radio for the artists. It was all designed for one purpose, and that was when an artist came to town, the radio stations would play that artist constantly. So when they had a show, people would know who they were and they would go and see them because just like today, the money is in the concerts.
Right.
And then you had the big players like iHeart, Cumulus, Audacity. They went around and they decided they were going to take over radio. And so they went into every market and bought up all the little mom and pop radio stations, thinking that they were going to control the market. Because when you're advertising, if you've got a business in town, you're going to advertise on the number one market in the number one station in the market. And so they figured they'd go in, they'd buy up all the radio stations, and they would control the airwaves. Then a funny little thing happened. The internet came around and internet radio, and that kind of put the brakes on iHeart and Cumulus taking over radio because all of them are broke now. They're all bankrupt because nobody listens to radio anymore. Everybody is listening on the internet or on subscription XM radio.
Right. Right. So what does that mean for yield indie artists? Because back in the day, you would submit a song, and if you didn't have a label, like, who's listening to it? Having a label seemed a lot more important than it does now to get your songs heard.
Well, there were a lot more labels back then too, don't forget, because the only place anybody was going to hear your music was on the radio. So all the labels, they all had their own pressing. I mean, they all came out with, they're the ones that released the record. So they would contact all the radio stations. They would send the radio stations the 45s. Today, it might be close to the same thing. Instead of sending out 45s, you've got record labels or managers sending out MP3s to everybody. The internet, though, it's definitely changed everything because now you can target your audience. You can do country, rock, whatever you want. There's a station out there, and there's so many indie stations that you could scroll up and down the dial and never listen to the same station. I think there's 50,000 indie stations out there on the internet. And
Wow.
every day some go away and some new ones come around.
Right. Right. I mean, it used to be ungodly expensive, like because I had to send a CD or even early on a CD to all the radio stations I wanted to play my music, and they might not play it. So I had to send out what 3,000 or it was expensive, expensive, expensive. Now it's a lot cheaper, but you guys are getting a lot more.
Well, we're getting a lot more, and people aren't buying albums anymore. You still get artists out there, they're still doing albums, and they'll send an entire album. And it's like, I don't need an entire album. Just send one or two songs. I'm not playing your entire album. I'm sorry. I might play a couple of hits. I might play a couple, two, three songs from the album, but I'm not playing the entire album. And, back in the day, they would send 45s. They might send albums, but the albums there was always a top 10 hit on the album. So when you got the album, you knew which song was a hit. Now you get people sending albums, and you're like, I have no idea which is the number. What's the featured song on this album?
Right. You got to be very careful as an artist to pick your singles that you're going to send.
You do. I try to play it. If somebody sends me a song, I try to play everybody who sends me music. Because, like I said, if music is good, it's good. And who am I to say whether a song is good or not?
Well, you're the DJ.
Well, I've heard songs. Well, no, I mean, I've had people send me songs that I've thought, God, this song is great. This thing is fantastic. Nobody likes it. And then I played songs that it's like, it's okay. Everybody loves it. So there's no rhyme or reason. Even like it was back in the day. It all depends when it came out and who was listening to it. Now, you could have two songs come out at the same time, both similar. One hits, the other one doesn't. It's luck of the draw. It's all luck.
Yeah, it's luck, timing, hitting the right market at the right time.
Exactly.
And I know I do that too. Like I write songs and you get attached to them and you're like, well, I think this is going to be the big one, and some other people listen are like, that's not your single. This one is. And I'm like, what? Yeah, as an artist, I really have to step back when you really start marketing and get some honest feedback from people that you trust,
Yeah, but the problem is if you talk to 10 people, you're going to get 10 different answers.
Sometimes. They might like different songs, but they have an idea of what's going to be the strongest to lead off with.
Well, back in the day when radio was still radio, when songs came out, they didn't hit the entire country all at the same time. They came out in markets. So you might start out in California and build up in California, then go out to New York, and then maybe down to Atlanta, Chicago. So every market was different. And each song, even a number one song, they all started out differently around the country. They didn't all come out at the same time. And today with MP3s, you can blanket the entire industry and everybody's got your song all at the same time.
Right.
So it's a little different than it was back then. I miss the old time with the radio because I grew up listening to radio and I always wanted to be on radio. I think one of the things I really loved about radio is the mystery of it. You didn't know who you were listening to. You might see pictures of them, but it was a whole allure. You could put your imagination to work when you'd hear the DJ, and people didn't tune in for the music because you'd hear the same songs everywhere. They were tuning into the radio personalities, which is what they were back then. They were personalities, and the other reason people were tuning in was because of the contests the radio stations were giving out. Some would give out trips, some would give out concert tickets, money. I mean,
Yeah.
they give out whatever they could to try to get the audience. I mean, you don't get that today on internet radio.
Do you think MTV changed that? Made it more visual? Music as a visual media rather than strictly listening?
I think so. When MTV came out and music videos came out, it definitely made it so instead of hearing the song, you could actually see a video of the song. So people wanted the visual aspect of it rather than using their own imagination to try to picture the song. Because if you heard songs you were listening to when you were growing up, you could picture that song in your mind. And even today, when you hear a song that you heard when you were growing up, you can remember all the sights and the sounds the first time you heard that song. You could even remember how the air smelled like the first time you heard that song because music uses all of your senses. And I think we're losing that with the visual age because now everything is right in front of you. It's all video, so there's no imagination.
Yeah. Well, we talked about this before, a couple times. You know, 10 people listen to a song and 10 people are going to have different meaning of the song. And when you add the video, it kind of drives their interpretation
Well,
of the
they
song.
don't need an interpretation because they're seeing it right in front of them. So there's no imagination at that point.
Right.
They can't visualize it in their mind because they're seeing it right in front of them. I remember when radio first started out in the 50s when Gunsmoke was on the radio and then it was also on TV and they asked a kid, what do you like better, listening to it on the radio or seeing it on TV? And he said, I like the radio, the picture's better.
I do that when I read a book. I have all the characters in my head and, how they're going to be. And, I put myself in the book. And then you see the movie and you're like, no, no, that's not it. That's not the character. They just, and one of my favorite authors is Karen Slaughter, and they just made a Trent series out of her mysteries. And it just kind of like blew the whole series for me.
Because
Like,
you had in your mind, you envisioned how all of the people in the book were supposed to look, supposed to act, supposed to talk. Then you saw it on screen, and it's like, no, 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 this just blew your entire narrative about everything.
it is like, this is so, I know they're going to change the story, but, oh, they're killing me.
I know. See, that's why I still love radio. I took psychology classes when I was in college also because I wanted to be in radio and I wanted to learn the psychology behind radio and how to reach people because it's all psychological.
It is. It is. Well, let's talk about that though, because you did step to my side of the road here, and you did.
I did.
Great segue into you actually did dabble in songwriting.
I did.
Tell us about messing with my mind.
Well, I can tell you, I wrote it in 1980. It was my senior year of college. I was there for the summertime. Yeah, I'm dating myself. Yes, I know. Um, I went to one of the bars with one of my friends, and we went into the bar, and I walk in, and sitting at this one table was this girl. She just took my breath away when I saw her. And I told my friend, I said, I got to meet her. And he said, just follow my lead. I'll take care of it. So she's sitting at this table with this bunch of people, and this guy's chatting her up. So we're standing behind her and this guy. And I look at my friend Rich, and I said, hey, you got the time? And Rich looks and takes his hand, dumps his drink in the guy's lap to tell me the time. And the guy jumped up. And I guess I should qualify the fact that my friend Rich was on the weightlifting team.
Oh,
And so the guy jumped up and took one look at Rich and decided maybe tonight's not the night I want to die. So he went to the bathroom to clean himself up. And as soon as he went to the bathroom, I sat down. I was ballsy back then. What could I say? So we're talking, and my friend told me, he said, I'm taking off. I said, don't worry, take off. I'll have her drive me home. So he took off and they were closing the bar up. And I said, listen, my friend took off. Can you drive me home? And she did. She gave me her phone number, Couple days later, I called her up and she said, "We need to talk." And I said, "This is pretty good. Usually it's after the first date I get the we need to talk. I'm getting this before our first date." And she said, "Well, I shouldn't have given you my number. I'm engaged." And I said, "I don't want to marry you. I just want to get to know you."
Right.
So
Oh my
every day we would talk after, because we were both out of class at about 12 o'clock. So we talked to each other every day at 12:30. I'd call her up. So we agreed to go out on a date. So we went out and I tried something and she said, "I don't think we should see each other anymore." And I said, "Okay." And so I didn't call her the next day. 1 o'clock, she calls me and says, "Why didn't you call me?" And I said, "Well, you told me you didn't want to see me." And she said, "We could try this again." So this went on about 3, 4 times. And each time it was the same outcome until it changed. And I did find out that she actually was engaged, and she was engaged to the wrestling coach at the University of Wisconsin.
oh boy.
Like if I'm going to do something, I'm going to jump in both. I'm going to jump into the deep end with both feet. So we saw each other up until the time she got married, and that's how I got the song "Messing with My Mind." It took me about 10 minutes to write that song.
And it was your only one.
It only took me 43 years to get around to recording it. That song has followed me every place I have moved to. That song, the lyrics have followed me everywhere. So I'm talking to my friend Amber one night. This was about 3 years ago, and I said we were talking about music, and I said, I've got a song that I wrote back in 1980, and it was, how you got that stack of stuff that you take with you everywhere you move to is the same stack of stuff. It was in that stack of stuff. So I pulled it out, and I still remembered the melody. And so I sang it to my friend, and she said, "You should record it." And I said, "When pigs fly." So 3 years later, I finally got around to recording, and I went to Donnie Hammond's studio, After Dark Studio down in Georgia. He did a great job on it. He played all the instruments, made me feel very comfortable, and I was happy with how the song turned out. But I recorded it. I did not record it under my name because I figured if people listened to it and they thought that the song really sucked, I didn't want them saying, "God, you're terrible." And so I came up with the name Otis and the Gaslighters because my truck's name is Otis. And well, you know what gaslighting is. And so I just put the two of them together, and I figured this way, if people say, "God, that song is terrible," I'd be able to say, "I don't know, somebody sent it to me. What do you want?"
Oh, you're a coward.
Yes, I am, and I'll be the first to admit it. Thank you.
You really need a thick skin in this business because people are telling you straight up if they don't like it.
Oh, I get that all the time. I get people, one thing I got to tell, I don't know if I should say this on air because it might ruffle some feathers, but screw it. I've already put it out there. Genie's out of the bottle. But I really don't get along with most DJs. I bet you didn't know that.
Why's that?
Well, it's not the competition thing because I don't care about that. People want to listen to me, they'll listen to me. But the thing I don't like about most DJs is they all think that there's something that they're not. And they tell all the artists, "Submit your music. We'll review it for consideration whether we're going to play it on our station or not." And I always think to myself, what makes them the authority that they're going to decide if your song is good enough to be played on the radio? I'm sorry. I've always been under the impression that if somebody's got enough pride in their music that they're going to go to the studio, spend money to get a song recorded, mixed, and mastered, and then MP3s, and they've got enough pride that they're going to send it out to all the radio stations. Who am I to say that the song's not good? Like I said, I've heard songs that I thought were terrible, and people love them.
You got a good heart because I have to tell you, Spotify, you send your MP3s, nice write up, the whole thing, branded, all of that, to these playlist influencers. And the comments that come back, at first it would make me mad. Like, just tell me yes or no. I don't really care what your opinion is. Tell me if you're going to play it or not, add it or not, And they come up with these cockamamie things to tell you. And I'm like, no, you're wrong. Like, you really need a thick skin in this business because it can drag you down.
You know what? You do it because there's two reasons people get into the music business. The first reason, which is the wrong reason, is for fame and fortune, because there is no fame in this business, and the fame and fortune. And the other reason is because it's a passion, and you're going to do it whether you make $1 or $1 million, or whether one person listens to you or a million people listen to it, because it's what you were born to do. So
Yeah,
you got to make the decision why you're in the business to begin with.
right. Well, let's listen to Messing with My Mind.
Do we have to?
Oh, come on, be brave, be proud of what you
Somebody
did.
told me when I was first getting ready to record the song, and I was talking to one of my friends, and I said, "How long should I practice on the song?" And she said, "Well, you need to practice the song until you hate it." I said, "I already hate it, so I guess I'm already practiced." And she said, "No, no, no, just keep practicing until you hate it." But it's growing on me. But yeah, give it a listen.
All right, let's give it a listen.
First you tell me that you love me, then you say goodbye. Then you tell me that you want me to come back one more time. Oh, you tell me I should go, and then you say come back. Girl, I'll tell you this whole thing is giving me a heart attack. Girl, I wish that you would somehow finally make up your mind. Either you do or you don't wanna see me one more time. Oh girl, I wish that you would somehow finally make up your mind. 'Cause this whole damn thing's slowly messing up mine. Well, we ended up as lovers, which you said was wrong. And you said I should be packing 'cause you wanted me gone. Oh girl, I'm out the door and on my way, and you yell, come on back. Girl, I'll tell you this whole thing is giving me a heart attack. Girl, I wish that you would somehow finally make up your mind. Either you do or you don't wanna see me one more time. Oh girl, I wish that you would somehow finally make up your mind. 'Cause this whole damn thing's slowly messing up mine. Again, but somehow I can tell that any minute now you'll say that I should go, and then I'll open up the door and I'll be on my way. And once again you'll plead with me to stay, stay, stay. Girl, I wish that you would somehow finally make up your mind. Either you do or you don't wanna see me one more time. Oh girl, I wish that you would somehow finally make up your mind. 'Cause this whole damn thing slowly messing up mine. Yes, this whole damn thing is slowly messing up my mind.
So what do you think?
And we are back on the ranch. We are brought to you by Blast Music 24/7, which is a great stop for indie all artists to showcase your music, all kinds of networking opportunities. And if you are an Americana artist and want to be on the ranch, just check out the link that's annoyingly going below, and you can apply to be on the ranch. Right now, we have a very special episode where we're really taking a kind of an analytical look at the music business itself, the changes that have gone on in radio, being a DJ, the whole streaming industry, and what that means for indie artists. And we are here with the incomparable Phil Kranz, and we just listened to his one and only original song, Messing With My Mind. How
By
was it?
Otis and the Gaslighters. Don't forget, by Otis and the Gaslighters.
It's like, oh, he's disavowing any knowledge of actually having written and performed that song.
That's right. You know, it's funny because my friend Donnie, the one who produced it, he played all the instruments in that song.
Oh, that's typical of some studios. I have a whole group that I work with in the studio, and then I have the Werewolves of Summer that I perform with. So we have some people listening and really like the message of the song. And it was heartfelt, the song. You know, it was a good effort.
Well, it was true to life. I mean, that's basically everything that you've heard in the song is what happened. Just so you know.
Right. And it did tell the story. I got that. And I thought some of the lyrics were really clever.
Well, thank you. That was my one and only song. You know, they say everybody's got a song in them. That was my song.
That was it.
That was it. So
you never wanted to dabble, never wanted to be on stage?
No. I told you I have a real fear of public speaking. Don't ask me how that is, considering I'm a DJ. But you know, when I'm talking to people, I'm behind the microphone, so nobody could see me.
Right.
I'll tell you what. When I came down to Chattanooga, because back up in Chicago, I got my start. I was on a couple of smaller FM radio stations in Chicago. One was an oldie station, and there was another top 40 station, and so I was with them for a while. Then I was program director with a radio station. Then I went, because I've always done things backwards. Don't ask me why, because most people start out in music and move to talk radio. I started out in talk radio and moved to music, because I started out a little bit of music, then I went into talk radio. And I was doing that. I had a weekend time slot at a radio station in Chicago. And it was fun. I enjoyed it because it was it was politics, it was opinion and news. Until I got my first death threat, which that was always fun. I remember calling my program director and telling him that I got a death threat, and he said, "Well, you're doing something right." So I always want to try to find a way to make sure I got at least one death threat a week, because then I knew people were listening and they were engaging with me. So when I moved down here to Chattanooga, I got hired to do morning talk over at the radio station in Ringgold. They hired me 7 to 9 a.m. And it was talk, news, and opinion. And I was playing music, bumper music, and instead of just playing little excerpts of the song, I was playing the entire song. And eventually the music ended up taking over the show. And I remember the day I got fired from there, which I got fired from a few places. It's no big deal. That's one of the things about being a DJ. You learn how to take getting fired very well. Because my friend Dick Biondi, he was legendary in Chicago, his claim to fame was he got fired at like 35 radio stations. Oh. And so I remember when they called me up and they said, "Hey, you want to go to lunch?" And I said, "Sure, I will go to lunch." And I said, so they took me to this fancy restaurant and they said, "Order anything you want." And I said, "So this is what the condemns last meal is like." And they said, "Well, we had a format change. You didn't make the cut." And I said, when did this go in effect?" And he said, "Today."
Stop there. Explain what a format change means.
Well, format change, depending if you're playing country music and all of a sudden you switch to rock music, or if you're doing top 40 and you suddenly switch to talk or Christian music. So it's an entirely different format. So all the music that you've got, everything that you're doing, suddenly that all stops and they bring in all new people to take over. It's the only business that's got zero job security.
Right, because it's about dollars and advertising dollars.
It is, and it's also the program director because most of the program directors were DJs. And if a program director didn't like you, you were pretty much dead in the water because you were the first one they were going to let go.
Yeah. You can hear it. Like, I've been on Sirius Radio since it started, and you could hear the station shifting around, reformatting, trying to get into some semblance that makes sense. There
Well,
was
the great
a
thing
lot of
about
shifting around.
well, the great thing about satellite radio is because it's genre specific, so you can listen to 50s music, 60s, 70s, 80s. They tailor make it so that whatever genre, whatever you're interested in listening to, they've got a station just for you. Some of them have DJs. A lot of them, all they do is just play music, just nonstop, 24/7. They might come in with, a little blurb here and there, but most of the radio stations, the FM radio stations, they don't have any DJs. I mean, you could listen to your favorite FM radio station. They might have one DJ, maybe somebody in the morning or somebody at lunchtime. But outside of that, everything is all syndicated or it's all just music generated by the computer,
Right, right.
which is really a shame because it's taken away the personality part of radio.
Well, and this is kind of where I'm going with indie music, because the internet has really put a focus on indie artists. That market is bigger than ever, but yet it actually has presented a lot of challenges too, because Sirius Radio is like the holy grail of play my music, like the old FM stations used to be. Okay, now I can get myself in the radio, but Sirius and all the others, the bigger syndicated, they don't want to hear you. You're not. So what do you see shifting for indie artists?
Well, what happened when the internet came out? The major players, the major record labels, they chose terrestrial radio. They said, we've got terrestrial radio because they can control terrestrial radio. That's why they've still got Billboard. And the only place if you're a major player, you're going to get played on FM radio. If you're an indie artist, there's no major FM stations that are going to play you.
Right.
So the indie artists said, well, we'll take internet, which turned out to be a better choice because more people are listening to internet radio today than they are terrestrial radio. Because let's face it, you get in your car, you're not turning the radio on. You might turn on XM radio, or else you're going to go and you're going to hook your phone up to your car and listen. You're going to stream or you're going to listen to internet music, but you're not listening to terrestrial radio. And so it's been the internet's been a blessing for indie artists, but it's also been a curse because there is no money in the business.
Right. 0.003 cents for a 30-second listen.
It's not even that. It's the one thing people don't understand is because there's people out there who think that if their song gets played on a radio station, that they automatically start getting royalties. And when you explain to them that, no, it doesn't work that way, before you get any royalties, your song has to be spun 50,000 times on terrestrial radio or 100,000 times on internet radio. And that's that one specific song. And how many songs out there are going to get spun 100,000 times?
I have 3.
Well, there you go. See, you're lucky, but most people don't have that luxury. So most people.
I actually have 2 songs that are still getting close to 1,000 spins a day on radio. That's still going strong. So
that's fantastic. So you are one of the 1% out there.
I'm actually one of the big people with the label I've been working with. I'm probably the only one that has monetized because Sony Records will not pay out unless you make $100. Did you know that?
I knew most of them. They had a minimum before
they have a minimum. So if I make $98, someone else gets my money.
Isn't that nice? Isn't that fun?
Isn't that great? I'm working my butt off you listen for at least 30 seconds. Yeah. And if I don't make the threshold, that's for like Sony, Universal. Those are the bigger distributors that you want to use because labels use them. You know, other indie artists, you have DistroKid, TuneCore, you know, all the others that you can use, CD Baby, you know, which are just made for indie artists, even
Right.
though the record labels own like 15-30% of those companies as well. So there's that.
Indie artists are kind of behind the eight ball with everything because the major players control music. They control radio, they control the labels, they control what you're going to hear and what you're not going to hear. I remember when the CEO of Sony once said, if you don't hear it on the radio, it doesn't exist.
And to an extent, that's still true. The Billboard tracks CD sales. Who's buying? You know, not an indie artist. They might buy Beyonce or Taylor Swift. You know, those who are getting tracked. You have to pay like Cashbox or Billboard to track you before you even get tracked.
Yes,
so
you do.
I am getting spins, but nobody knows about it because I'm not paying to get tracked.
Well, it's just like radio stations. In order to find out what kind of listenership you've got, you have to buy the book.
Yeah.
And if you don't buy the book, and you're not going to get any advertisers because all the advertisers, they're all looking at the book and they're going to go with the number one or number two station in the market. If you're not in the book, they're not even going to pay attention to you. So you could sell advertising space, $20 a spot. Right? So you're not going to get rich.
Right. I actually bought space in Nashville. Nashville wasn't playing me for a while. And I'm like, oh man, it was ripping at me. So I actually bought some spots and I kind of forced them into it, which was kind of funny.
Well, don't ask me about Nashville because Nashville you know.
I know. It's a pit and I'd give it up, but I just thought it was funny. I'm like, oh, really? You don't want to hear my voice? I just bought an ad for your radio station, so you got to listen. So
that's why I love the thing like what Tammany over at ISSA is doing because she's giving a voice to indie artists and she's giving them a platform and a place that they can go and they could celebrate their wares and their accomplishments along with their fellow artists and songwriters, musicians, everybody. So it's a great time.
It is. I love Tammany. Tammany's been on the show because she has a great voice and she's a songwriter. She's a talented force in the indie music industry. She really, really is. And she's no one better to indie artists recognition for what they're trying to do.
And she does it because it's a passion. She's not making any money at this.
Yeah. Well, let's back up a little bit and talk about the songs that are coming out. We were talking about songs and we listened to your song, which I really enjoyed. Has the quality of music changed over the years? What you expect to get from an artist, has that changed or shifted over the years?
No, I don't think so. I think artists are putting out the best they possibly can. You know, they're constrained by money like everybody else. And it costs a lot of money to make a record. I get that. But I think the quality of the music and I think the music in general, it's as good or better than it ever was. There's some great artists out there. The fact that they are not played on terrestrial radio and they are not on Billboard is an indictment of the entire music industry.
Yeah, it's true. There are some really talented artists out there, but I do think maybe I'm wrong. I've seen a shift that you can no longer do a demo. You need to spit out radio ready songs.
You know, I got a friend of mine. I've known him forever, and he was big back in the late '60s. He was lucky enough to get in with a band out of Chicago that had a couple of national top 10 hits. My friend Ronnie with New Colony 6, and so a couple of years ago, he decided he was going to put out a demo, and he talked to Jimmy Peterick from Ides of March, and Jimmy's got a recording studio, and Ronnie said, I just want to do a demo, and Jimmy said, no, you don't do demos. Everything's got to be full production. It's got to be radio ready. And he gave Ronnie a price, and Ronnie's like, no, forget that. I'll just do it with my guitar. And so, I mean, it's becoming expensive, and there are artists out there who, there's one guy who I know, he was going to Nashville spending a gazillion dollars to get his music done. And nobody was listening to it. So, I mean, he was throwing his money out when I talked to him and I said, why don't you just, because he went on Facebook, he contacted me on Messenger and he said, hey, I got a song I want you to hear. And so he pulled out his guitar and started playing the song. He said, what do you think? I said, why don't you just record that? And he said, what, just acoustic? I said, yeah, just record acoustic. You got nothing to lose. It's not going to cost you anything. Just record yourself playing the guitar and then release it as an MP3. And he did that, and he's actually getting success doing that. So he's not spending any money. He's got people listening to him now.
That's rare, though, from what I've been hearing from the industry. You know, especially if you're trying to get streams, Spotify, Deezer, you know, all that. It's got to be mixed and mastered, and it's got to be a solid production.
I guess it all depends the reason you're getting into music. If you're getting into it for fame and fortune, you're right. If you're getting into it because it's a passion and this is what you love doing, what does it matter? If 10 people listen to you or 1,000 people listen to you, you're doing it because it's your passion and it's what you were born to do.
Yeah, and I guess it is your music goals as well. You know, there are some people who can play in their living room and be completely happy. And I envy those people like a lot. You know, it's just for the love of music, you know, and there's others that, you know, are trying to, you know, be heard and get their message out there and, you know, everything in between.
Well, I'd hate to be the bearer of bad news for people out there, but if you're over the age of 30, you ain't never going to make it.
Right.
Because
right.
you're never getting a record label with a major label.
Nope. Not a major label. Not a major label. Forget it.
You play it on terrestrial radio. You're never getting any of that. So if your dream is that you're going to be the next Taylor Swift, if you're over 30, ain't happening. Sorry.
Right. Now, I totally agree with you. And when I had one song show up on Cashbox number 10, I was completely thrilled and thought I had arrived as an artist, like, because I knew how impossible that whole thing was.
That is. I mean, it's a big feat, and you should be very proud of yourself.
I'm like, I had that picture, like I want to frame it. Like it was there for half a second, you know, in between Blink 182 and somebody else.
But you were up there, so how many other people can say that? You know, I got a friend of mine, he's been doing music for a long time. He's got, 20 albums out there. And I asked him one time, I said, how much money do you have invested in your music? And he said, I don't know, probably 100,000. And I said, how much have you made so far? And he said, let's look. And so he went down all the streaming sites that he's got. And he's like, I don't know, about $3,000-4,000. I said, that's a great return on your investment, isn't it? Good thing I've got a job that I make a lot of money.
Right. You make 0.0005 on your investment or something like that.
It's really a shame, though, when you think about it, isn't it? You spend all that money to get a song, to do a song, and you put it out there on streaming, and you get what, a 0.7% or something, and you got to sell like 20 streams before you get a penny.
You know, I think the only other industry, my sister raises horses. And she shows horses. And again, you do it for the love
exactly
of horses. But, you know, to have her horses shoed like every couple of weeks, you know, and to take the animal bills and the vet bills and things like that. I think it's the only other industry, like it's like being a musician. You just do it because you love it and you can't imagine your life without it.
Well, you know, my friend, the one who I started working for when I first came down here, we're good friends and we go out to lunch, 2-3 times a week. And I still do a lot of stuff at the radio station, but he owns 6 radio stations. And he told me, he said, owning a radio station is like buying a boat. The 2 greatest days of owning a radio station is the day you buy it and the day you sell it, because you're not going to make any money. There's no money in radio anymore. So there's people out there who start these internet radio stations thinking they're going to be the next Dick Clark or the next WABC. That's not going to happen because there's so many stations out there, and you actually need something called advertisers. And people are not going to advertise if they don't know who you are or how many people you got listening to you. Because you make up any figure you want. You could tell people you got 1 million listeners, and what does it matter? But he's got 6 radio stations, and they're all breaking even, so they're paying the bills, but he's not making any money at them.
Right. But so the stations aren't even making money.
No, there's no radio stations out there that are making money. Look at iHeart. Look at
who's making money? I'll tell you who's making money. These Spotify playlisters who feed on indie artists. If you want your music listened to, not even played, you got to pay like a couple bucks for them just to listen to it. Payola is back. And again, you're getting nothing on your return. Although there's certain playlists that you're going to do really well.
What I don't understand, though, is why are people contacting these internet, what did you call them? Influencers?
Yeah.
Why do people... I've never understood that. You know, they've got all these influencers out there on TikTok and on YouTube and Facebook. I never got that, because I'm not going to decide what I'm going to buy or what I'm going to listen to based on what somebody told me I should do.
Well, again, you know, the pressure, I think, for indie artists to get their music out there, and you have to be on playlists. You have to be on playlists. And, you know, you go through Submit Hub and all these other places to try to get on your playlist, you know, and it's a waste of money. And these people are mean. The feedback. Just like I said, tell me yes or no. I don't care what you think, you know.
You know, the one thing that the one group of people I really feel sorry for are the young people who are coming up. Because if a young person sends me their music, I always play them, because whether the song is any good or not, I still play them, because I figure, you know what? They are going to be carrying the torch for the music industry when we're all dead and gone. And if we don't treat them right now, they're going to go somewhere else when they get older. So I think it's important that we build them up and we support them.
So we have a couple of seconds here. We have another minute or so left. What's your advice for indie artists?
Do it as a passion. Don't worry about trying to make it in the business, because you have to define what making it is. But just do it because you enjoy doing it. Send your music out. Don't pay attention to what people are telling you. If somebody tells you it's no good, you know what, just brush it off and don't pay them any mind. And number one, the biggest thing, don't pay anybody to play your music.
Right.
If somebody wants you to pay them to get airplay, run away as fast as you can.
And Phil, in our last minute, where can we find you? Because you're so good to us indie artists.
Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern. And then Tuesday and Wednesday, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern. I'm at Spreaker.com/user/Black Dog Zero. That's a mouthful, but that's okay. And then on Saturday nights, my sock hop coast to coast is at WAAKradio.com. That's a lot easier, isn't it? But hey.
Okay. Oh, who are the dorks?
The dorks, that is me, my friend Scotty from Colorado, who I've known for 30 years, and for some bizarre reason, we're still friends. And then Kim, she's up in Canada. She's a singer-songwriter, great music. If you've never heard her music, you owe it to yourself. And she's going to be playing at the after party at ISSA Saturday night.
I can't wait.
Check her out. She is an amazing singer-songwriter. You know, she's been on the show for 3 years. I've never seen her yet.
It's going to be a good time in Atlanta, August 24th. Guys, thank you for checking out and hanging with us tonight. A really important show for the changes in the industry. Thank you, Phil, for spending time with us, and we'll see you next Monday.
Well, Randie, I want to thank you for having me on tonight. I really enjoyed it.
It was a lot of fun, Phil. Sit tight. We'll be right back. I'm on the road. Don't know where it goes. I'm on the road. Follow your heart. It won't let you down. Follow your heart.
beyond